Welcome back, and let's continue with one of our lead stories this evening. We've asked the Border Management Authority CEO and Commissioner, Dr. Michael Masiapato, to share more on these developments. Dr. Masiapato, a very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us, and a warm welcome to the late edition.
No, thank you very much, Simpio. We really appreciate this opportunity as the Border Management Authority.
Indeed. Now, you say that the BMA met 11 out of the 12 performance targets in the second quarter. So which single target was not met? And more importantly, why should the public trust your overall success when one key area failed?
Yeah, no, you see, in terms of the annual performance plans, these are the targets that are fairly set, and in many instances, it's not an easy thing to achieve 100%, but otherwise the target that was not met was fairly an administrative target. It was not necessarily the target in the operational space, so it is fairly a target that has to do with the development of the what you call the business continuity in the environment. So on that particular basis, you will remember that as we do this work around the port, we also need to have a mechanism for the purposes of business continuity in instances of some kind of disruption, whether in the form of floods and things like that. So in as far as the development of that model, we had not been able to fully complete that, but it is something that we are working on in the current third quarter, and we should be able to recover.
Dr. Masiapato, I think we need to be very careful about getting overexcited about meeting targets, because meeting targets can be about process and not necessarily the outcomes. Hence, I'm asking you, how many illegal crossings, forged documents, or attempted trafficking incidents still slipped through our borders despite meeting those targets?
Yeah, I mean, Simpio, I think one thing that we need to be able to look at is about the fundamentals. And the fundamentals here, obviously, we do have to deal with the negative part. And the negative part is the issue of illegal migration, is the issue of illicit goods movement, is the issue of narcotics, is the issue of human trafficking. But on the other side, we have to be legitimate movement of persons. I mean, just in that second quarter that we're reporting about, we've been able to facilitate over 9 million people. And that is where we are citing the activities around the 40 meetings of the G20 tracks that we had to facilitate dignitaries that came into the country. We talk about the number of people that came from the continent going to Moria for their September pilgrimage, and a lot of other tourists that came into the Republic. So that is basically the essence in as far as the positive side or the facilitation side. But at the same time, as simple, we had a lot of interceptions. We talk about over 8,000 individuals that we intercepted trying to enter the country illegally. Out of that, we have a dissection where around 4,000 did not have documents, and another number, I think it's around 3,000 or so, were inadmissible, and the other number were fairly those. So basically, in terms of the work that we do and the targets that we have set, that is basically what we account to Parliament on. We are able to bring empirical data on the basis of supporting all the activities that we had to do in the quarter.
What does success mean to the BMA? I mean, processing larger volumes or stopping unlawful entry more effectively?
So that's a very interesting question, Simpiwe. So basically, the work that we do, it is supposed to be a balanced work.
Yes.
So the first part, obviously, is the work of having to make sure, which is actually embedded in Section 5, subsection A and B of the Border Management Authority. It says facilitate and manage the legitimate movement of persons. So that is the core positive part. So under normal circumstance, if everybody was to comply with the law, if anybody was to do everything according to the book, that was basically our primary focus. But the key word there is legitimate, meaning we have to deal with illegitimate, meaning those that are trying to enter the country illegally. And that is why we have to balance both. But of course, when we do the balancing of both the facilitation but also the security side, we need to make sure that the facilitation becomes highly concentrated on the basis of saying we are able to bring the people into the country for tourism purposes. We are able to bring people into the country for investment purposes and the rest of the other activities, because that is what contributes positively to the ecosystem. But at the same time, we must deal with the negative part. And the negative part, we deal with it in terms of making sure people don't undermine the law.
And an interesting point there you made about the legitimacy and the illegitimacy of some of the cases. I mean, 70% of travelers processed during the last festive season were foreign nationals. Have you at all analyzed how many overstayed or violated visa conditions afterwards? I mean, does this trend worry you from a national security and economic standpoint?
No, definitely it doesn't worry us. Remember, when we say that the number of people that we have actually facilitated, 70% is foreign nationals. So that is basically what every jurisdiction will want. Remember, we facilitate tourism. So we need to be able to say there has been a lot of people from all over the ecosystem that has been coming into our country for the purposes of coming in here and actually invest in here and leave their money in here. And that is the power of tourism.
Right.
So in that particular instance, we can actually indicate that if you were to look at those particular numbers, the other number that we spoke about, there is around 9 million, and the other number is around 7 million. So all of those, these are the people that basically came into the country to do different types of activities, and ultimately those that came on normal visas, they actually exited. And of course, if you were to look on the other side, or the other side on the land borders in particular, these are the people who will be crossing in to buy things in South Africa and be able to exit back into their country. Yes, we do have overstayers. And most of the overstayers are those that come into the country visa-free. And we know most of those are from within SADC.
And more so, Dr. Masiapato, the fact that South Africans are asking themselves, are our borders protecting citizens or simply facilitating regional migration? Should the country begin rethinking its visa and border policy in response to these patterns or trends?
Yeah, you see, Simpiwe, I think one thing that we need to fairly agree on, every jurisdiction will want people to visit.
Yes.
Because that is very fundamental, and that's exactly what is happening. Now, on the issue of whether we might need to relook at the visa regime and all of that, so that is a policy issue, and therefore policy issues are more residing within the principal organ of state. In this instance, if we talk immigration, it will be the Department of Home Affairs, and of course the minister, being the executive authority there, could be able to deal with that. But from where we sit, when people arrive at the port and we have to facilitate them into the country, so long as they have the requisite document and they are coming into the country, bringing in their money into the space, that is what the country will require. All right. Therefore, what we need to be dealing with, obviously, is the criminal elements that undermine the system, and that is basically what we do on a daily basis. That is why, as CPW, we have 505,000 individuals that we've been able to intercept who are attempting to enter the country illegally since our deployment in 2022.
Dr. Masiapato, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Simpiwe. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Well, the Border Management Authority says it has hit almost all of its targets and is confident that it can manage the festive surge. I mean, a surge largely driven by foreign nationals and major events. And with new technology, more boots on the ground and longer operating hours, Dr. Masiapato insists that, South Africa's borders are in safe hands. But with the past challenges still fresh in the public's mind, many will be watching closely to see if this is real reform or just improved reporting.